And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Okay, for the Sunday morning weather depiction chart here, IFR, North Slope, Arctic Coast, along the Brooks Range, some VFR. Then this area right through here from Kotzebue Sound all the way to the eastern interior, that's marginal VFR areas of due to smoke, and then marginal VFR due to clouds and precipitation here for the areas south and east of the Alaska Range. Lots of IFR over the southern Bering Sea down to the Aleutians. VFR though, northern Bering Sea there, St. Lawrence Island, and pretty good conditions, maybe marginal through the Bering Strait, but into the southern Chukchi Sea, pretty nice. And IFR up along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, especially western and northwest Prince William Sound, down along the Kenai Peninsula, possibly in the Resurrection Bay, at least early on, extending down across the southeast coast, with all the moisture of that storm system that's moving northeastward and weakening over the Kenai Peninsula tomorrow during the day. And for the afternoon, with that system continuing to weaken and the moisture starts to thin out a little bit, so we'll look at some VFR forming here over Fognak Island into the Barrens. Marginal VFR, mostly for south central Alaska up to the Alaska Range. IFR now from about Valdez eastward to Yakutat into the northern Panhandle and Canal Glacier Bay, and also down to the southeast there, otherwise marginal. Could be some VFR breaks showing up in the late afternoon here along the coast and maybe even pushing into the inside waters. And IFR still here over the southern Bering Sea, but kind of not as extensive as it has been, extending into Cape Neuenham there, Togiak Bay, southern Kuskokwim Bay. And Aleutians improving, some IFR lingering from Adak to about Amchitka Island. Otherwise, still marginal VFR up here in the north central interior due to smoke, and IFR right along the Arctic coast now, so a little bit of improvement. Then that area kind of seeps southward again along the central and eastern Arctic coast into the northern North Slope areas. And then just a little bit of marginal VFR with smoke conditions improving here over the interior. And then the marginal VFR still along and south of the Alaska Range. Less in the way of IFR now along the North Gulf Coast, but back to the solid IFR out over the Bering Sea to the Aleutians. Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, not too bad, VFR there. And Kuskokwim Valley, VFR, Kodiak Island, marginal, and some good improvement Monday morning here for the southeast coast. As you can see, just some marginal VFR up toward Lincoln and Glacier Bay. For the afternoon, some marginal VFR kind of pushes back in along the coast here of the Panhandle, stays pretty nice, central and eastern areas. Interior Alaska looking pretty good. VFR now from the North Slope all the way down into Cook Inlets, the Sitna-Manusca Valley, Copper River Basin. Southwest interior here, marginal VFR, Togiak Bay and Bristol Bay along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. And IFR still kind of skirting along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, but IFR here for the Bering Sea, but marginal for the eastern Aleutians. And for passes, tomorrow, optimistically going for a VFR day for both Anatuvik and Adigan Pass. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR. Rainy looks marginal, as does windy, let me back that up. Rainy, marginal VFR. Windy, VFR. And Isabel, VFR. And Mentesta, VFR as well. Tanita, IFR, early on becoming marginal, so a little bit of improvement throughout the afternoon hours. And Portage looks like it'll be IFR the entire day. And for Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels, about 8,000 feet here over southern Alaska up through the eastern interior areas, and then 10,000 feet back over the Chukchi Sea and the northwest part of the state, and a gradient right across the Panhandle supporting a good southwest jet there, 8 to 12,000 feet there, and cooler air now over the Aleutians at about 6,000 feet. With the icing threat here, got some possible isolated moderate rime icing for the central Aleutians, maybe as far east as Unumak Island, above about 6,000 feet out there. And then considerable moderate rime icing Still a possibility here for the North Gulf Coast into tomorrow afternoon, over to about Yakutat, westward into eastern Prince William Sound. Maybe a lingering zone here over the southern Kuskokwim Valley there, kind of north and northwest of Lake Iliamna. And the jet stream here showing a good southwest jet, 105 knots into the Panhandle. And that's going to be the pattern for the next several days there with, so any storm systems that should happen to form here down to the south will rapidly move northeastward into the southeast coast. Upper level low at 33,000 feet, pulling up into south central Alaska. Another one out there over the Aleutians. And 9,000 feet, showing a weak system there out over the central Aleutians. Easterly flow here across the northern Bering Sea, but only 20 to 35 knots. Pretty light and variable over most of mainland Alaska. Strongest winds again into the Panhandle here, anywhere from 40 to 50 knots. And 3,000 feet, westerlies turn southwest across the Gulf of Alaska. They're at about 30 knots and then diminish as they approach the coastline. Easterlies, 30 knots there for the Cape Lisburne Point Hope area. Otherwise, not too bad here over the Bering Sea. Maybe some southwest winds at about 25 knots into the Kuskokwim Delta area. And moving on to turbulence, we'll see still pretty windy here, supporting some light to isolated moderate turbulence, Lynn Canal Glacier Bay. And that extends over the southeastern Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula, and along Kodiak Island there. And moderate turbulence expected with those good northeast winds, east northeasterlies there, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne area. And that wraps it up.